Hey everyone, welcome back to another video of At-Home Speech and Language. This week I'll be sharing some tips on how to target your child's speech and language skills while reading a book. I'll be going over a couple of different things in this video, so check the description for timestamps if you want to skip to a certain section. All of these activities can be used with books that you have at home. There are also many options of free online books that you can use as well. The first thing I want to talk about is how to target articulation and/or phonological awareness with your child. Articulation is how we say different speech sounds, and phonological awareness is our awareness of the phonological structures, which is a fancy way of saying our awareness of the sound structure of words. One of my favorite ways to work on articulation or sound goals with my students are by focusing on a specific sound. Let's say your child's working on the R sound. And as you read a book, at the end of each page, you can have them find all the words with R's in it, or you can help them find these words. You can practice saying each of these words before you flip the page. Or you can make a running list of these words if they just want to see what happens next in the story. And then at the end of the story, you can go through all of the R words that you found in the story. One easy way that you can target phonological awareness with your child is by helping them sound out certain words in the book. In particular, a lot of my students have trouble with their awareness of different blends, like S blends, like the sounds S and W in the word swing, or L blends like S and L in the word slide. These blends might be a little bit trickier for my students to spell, and so it's really helpful to go through some of these trickier words that have blends in them and help them sound out each sound in them. Like the word block, for instance. If the word block shows up in the story, you could talk about what sounds make up the word. B, L, A, K. So there are 4 sounds in there. This is something that you can do for your child if they're an emerging reader. You can help them sound out each of the words. This will go a long way in helping them build their phonological awareness skills, and all you have to do is help them sound out the words. Now, if we're getting away from articulation and starting to talk about language, one easy way that you can target language skills is by asking your child different WH questions while you're reading a book. I tend to do this after I read through the actual text on each page, and then I'll ask them something to help them reflect on what just happened. Depending on the age of your child, you might want to make these questions easier or harder. You might just have to play around with it a little bit. These could be who questions. If you have a younger child, you could be asking, who is that? Who is the good guy in the story? Who's the bad guy? Who do you think stole the cookies from the cookie jar? This question in particular allows your child to make inferences or make predictions about who they think stole the cookies from the cookie jar. You could ask your child what questions. Going along with what I just said, you could ask them, what do you think will happen next? And see what they have to say. What will happen next in the story? Use some of those predicting skills. If your child's younger, you could ask them, what kind of animal is that in the story? Or you could make it a little bit harder by asking, what is that character doing? You could also ask your child when questions. For older kids, you could ask, when do you think this story takes place? You could ask your child where questions, like where is the setting of the story? If a character has gone missing, you could ask, where did they go? And use those prediction skills once again. If you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of predicting. If you want to provide a little challenge, you could have your child answer why questions. Why do you think that character chose to do that? How does that make the character feel? If you want to work on making your child's sentences longer and more complex, you could target using the word because to answer why questions. Why do you think that character did that? I think that character did that because he felt angry. I also like to use expansions and extensions when working with especially my younger students. These are ways of helping your child produce longer and more complex sentences. I tend to use these strategies mostly with my younger students, but they can be used at any age. An expansion is basically adding in the missing words. So if your child is looking at a picture in a book and says, car go, you could say, the car is going. You added in those smaller little words that they're missing, and then you can practice saying that longer sentence together and having them repeat after you. Extensions are very similar, but basically they add in more information. So if your child is looking at a picture and says, bee fly, You could say, yes, the bee is flying so he can help our flowers grow. So you're kind of adding in a little bit more information or knowledge to help your child. I always try to get my students to repeat after me, and giving them that model to imitate these longer utterances is really helpful. The last thing I want to cover is sequencing and retelling. If your child's speech seems unorganized and it seems like they're just telling you all sorts of information without a lot of cohesion to it, having them work on sequencing might be beneficial. Something I like to do to help with this is to write down the words first, next, then, last, as sort of a visual reminder to include those words. These words will help organize what happened first in the story, next in the story, then, and last. You could even use the words beginning, middle, and end just to separate those up. So ask your child, what happened in the beginning of the story? What happened in the middle of the story, and what happened at the end. And just having an open discussion with your child about what happened in different parts of the story is really beneficial in itself. You could also have your child retell the story in their own words. When I have a student retell a story, I look for those sequencing words like first, next, then, and last, but I also look for story grammar elements, which are characters, setting, problem, and solution. There are a multitude of story grammar elements, but we'll keep it simple for this video. Most stories set up with characters and setting in the beginning, so that exposition piece. And then usually something happens and there's a problem in the middle. And then last, the characters find a solution. Now, obviously, not every story follows the structure, but most children's books do. I hope this video helped illustrate a lot of different ways that you can help your child with their speech and language skills, all while reading a book at home. Thank you.